Hello, this is StudMuffin 1986, and today I'm going to be going over how to play with the Type 59. Now, in a previous video I made, I had already gone over the basic rules and guidelines for playing with a medium tank, so I'm not going to go over that in this video. However, in this I'm going to be going over more of the fingerprint of the tank, meaning its strengths, its weaknesses, how to play with it, and so forth, more in detail, just getting more down into the nuts and bolts of the tank. So just to give you a little history of how I am personally with a Type 59 tank, I currently have an 83% plus win rate with it, and I have about an average damage of 2,023, I believe. I'm not the best. I know that there's players obviously better than me, but I am listed as a Unicum / Super Unicum player on the WOT Stars website with this tank, so I felt like I had something to offer when creating this video. So one of the strengths of the Type 59 is its turret. It has great frontal turret armor. Just like how I'm doing here in this video, I'm just barely peeking over, so that's the only thing that's showing, moving back and forth, and as you can tell, the enemy is having a very hard time penetrating my tank because of that great turret. So one thing to keep in mind with the Type 59, even though it has decent frontal hull armor, is to try positioning yourself always where the turret is the only thing just poking out and exposed to the enemies as you're taking shots at them, and then to roll back while you need to reload, and then moving up again to take another shot at them. Another good aspect about this tank is it has a pretty good cannon. It's got decent aim time, decent rate of fire, decent accuracy, really across the board. However, as you can see from this video, I'm having a little bit of a hard time penetrating some of these heavier tanks, so I would highly recommend carrying APCR rounds with you. So another advantage of this tank, I guess that could have gone a long way in explaining the turret armor, is it's very low to the ground, which is very nice because once again, you can hide behind obstacles and find cover a lot easier when it comes to the landscape, and be able just to poke out and be able to get those shots and keep your hull completely covered. Now, one of the things that's really nice about this tank, being it's so low to the ground and it has an excellent turret, is anytime you come across an enemy heavy that's out in the open, exposed, not really paying attention to you, and there's really no friends around it, is you can actually get yourself right up next to that tank and just hug it to the point where you're right along the side of them and just shifting back and forth while your cannon is pointed right into them and just unload shells. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when you are trying to peek your turret out over and get those shots off the enemy, I didn't do it very well there. I got hit by that T-32, but is to always make sure that your tank is still angled in a way, which will increase the strength of that frontal hull that only has decent armor, which will give it much better armor to be able to deflect those shells that are being shot at you. You're at a decent distance with an enemy tank. It does have pretty good accuracy, but just when targets are much further away, especially when they're heavily armored, can make it much more difficult to hit those finer spots. So, not a bad game. I think this was a perfect example of how to really utilize the Type 59 strengths, at the same time protecting its weaknesses in a position while fending off heavy tanks. This is what I mean by understanding the fingerprint of every tank. Every tank is going to be completely different and unique in their own way, and one thing I make sure to do before going into a game is I go through and look at all the stats. Look at its rate of fire, look at its armor, look at its engine power, just really diving down into the nitty-gritty so that I can understand the big picture of how to really play with this tank And by doing that, having that understanding, it'll help me know how to position myself on each battlefield. Now, to go over some of the weaknesses of the Type 59 that I've noticed when playing with this tank, is like most mediums, it doesn't have the best hull armor, but decent frontal armor, but not very good enough to the point where you can have it completely sometimes exposed and guaranteed to deflect some shots from enemies that are firing at you when you're too out in the open. So right here, for instance, you'll be able to notice, even though I don't necessarily have a complete hill tied behind, I have the high ground advantage, which is a very basic military tactic, allowing me, because of the angle that I'm at on top of the hill, my hull technically is still mainly covered, and I'm just barely able to peek my turret and gun over, look down, and be able just to keep popping shots in these enemies as they try pushing up toward the hill. So with this T-28, I think it was a perfect example of why it's always good to make sure you're carrying APCR rounds, because just then as I went up over the hill a little bit to get a quick shot off its lower plate, you saw that the majority of the tank was red. I had no shot on it for the most part. And so switching to an APCR round was able to expose that lower plate, giving me a quick shot so that I can go ahead and reload and then quickly get another shot off that tank or another enemy tank visible in front of me. So once again, what you're able to see here is I'm utilizing the tank's strengths as much as possible, while at the same time protecting its weaknesses just by, in most cases, barely peeking its turret over so that I can get a clear shot in the enemy, taking that shot and just backing up. Now, one thing that I find is really helpful for you in battle, when not just only understanding your tank's fingerprint that you're playing in, but also understanding all the other different types of tank's fingerprint, so that you know when you're approaching them that, okay, maybe they don't have a very accurate cannon, or their reload time is really slow, or their aim time is really slow, so you can take advantage of their weaknesses and maximize that. So for instance, if they have a really slow reload time and they're out in the open, no friends around them, you can take a shot and then just gun it, circle of death them, put them in a really bad spot, and take them out quickly. So that T-28 was a perfect example of how I was able to use his weaknesses to my advantage by just swooping down, coming right up behind him. He had no shots on me, no protection, weakest part of his armor, and I was able just to unload shell after shell until eventually just killing him. So understanding, once again, an opponent's fingerprint will really help you and give you the advantage of how to use your tank even better when coming up against other enemy tanks. So other weaknesses could be aim time, accuracy, rate of fire, turret rotation, hull traverse speed, speed in general. You know, there's just so many factors that if you really understand that all about with your tank and the enemy's tank, it could really give you the advantage. Well, hopefully you're able to learn something from this video, and not only just in regards to the Type 59, but to also help you to understand that by understanding the fingerprint of your own tank and understanding the fingerprints of all the other tanks that you could possibly be coming up against, could really help you out on the battlefield and give you that advantage. So really, it's all about knowing how to maximize your damage output, but at the same time, knowing how to balance by protecting the amount of damage input you receive on the battlefield. Well, thanks for watching. Once again, this is StedMuffin 1986. Hope you enjoyed my video and were able to learn a few things from it. Please write comments or anything I can do to help improve my videos. And yeah, thanks again for watching.